Today on the 1012 podcast, myself and Kiddy welcome Rob Bowron, the man who created Beta Rank, on the show to make picks for every Week 7 Big 12 game, plus a really good conversation about the current state of college football. And we have cracked the code on how to figure out if a coach is about to get fired, and it has everything to do with a Google search. Coming up on the 1012 podcast.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to the 1012, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We are the flagship show of the 1012 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. It's TEN, the number 12, the word network. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining me today. It is Thursday. That means that we're making picks. It is a light Big 12 week, but it is not a light show. We got a lot to get to. I'm excited about today's episode. I've got some really good guests lined up through the rest of the season. I'm very excited about that. I'm really excited about today. Before we get to our guest, he is the BetMGM betting pro. He's got the best guy making weird picks with his buddies podcast out there that you could listen to. He is our co-host, Chase A. Kiddy. Chase, welcome back, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me once again. Happy to be here. 3-2 with the buddies last week, and we threw out stat of the week. The picks we've thrown out now 4-0. So our trash is literal treasure. How about that?
Okay. So what you're telling me then is if you'll just tell me which one is the one to throw out.
Oh, we do it
what?
in the show. We throw a pick out at the end of the show.
Okay,
we're not using that. So, you don't get to live life in hindsight, but I mean, you take those picks we threw out and substitute them in for our losers. I think we're in first place in the entire Circa Millions contest. So
I'm going to put real money on the ones you guys throw out moving forward.
That's what I would do.
Because that sounds like, that's the good way to do it. As we do, we have a guest here each week. I'm very excited about today. As you guys know, I run through a list of different numbers each week that I like. I like to get a variety of different opinions and different models. We have SP Plus and T-Shoe, FEI, of course, our good friend Parker Fleming. One of those that we mention all the time is, of course, Beta Rank. So I'm very excited to have, I guess, the father of Beta Rank himself, Rob Bowron, here on the show with us today. Rob, welcome to the 1012, man.
My grandfather makes me feel old.
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah.
I was talking to my kid this morning, and he asked about like people telling time by the sun when like we were walking to school, and I said, yeah, actually people did used to do that. They used to use sundials, and he's like, did you guys use sundials when you were a kid? And I was like, oh man. I was like, no, we had watches, and the world wasn't in black and white. Like, come on.
I like to think there's this vast difference between like when our grandparents and parents were old and like us now. But now I wonder, as I have turned 40, like, what are my kids gonna be like? You're old. Like, what were weird old things? I'm like, it's not like technology's taken some giant, like phones are small, but I've been around for that. Like, it's not, it's not the leap from like the TV stations literally turn off at 7:00 at night and you listen
Right.
to the radio. Like we have 24-hour cable and everything's at our fingertips. So,
Yeah. You didn't go
you
from
know.
like horses to like, like cars and the atomic bomb in your lifetime, right? Like phones are weakly powered computers in your hand, right? Like,
Well, I don't know. It seems like did things get better at that generation and we just keep making them worse? I don't know. All right. Speaking of kids, Rob, we like to start this show off with our guests each week because Chase and his lovely wife will be having their first kids in December. They're having twins. We just like to preface that. So we like to ask our guests each week for a piece of parenting advice for soon to be first time dad Chase.
so my piece of advice is like really generic and broad, but like my ex went on this like really like she read so many parenting books and she was like guilt tripping me into read a parenting book. And I was like, fine. So I read Dr. Spock. She was reading like really trendy, like whatever the flavor of the moment was, like parenting books. And I read Dr. Spock, and like the Dr. Spock book was like, you mostly already know how to do this. Just trust yourself. And I was like, okay, like that's actually, and I think for the most part, and I say this, and you will see there are, of course, like what you would jump to your head when you think of that is that there are so many people that you can think of because it's like the bad examples stick out in your head more that don't know how to do this clearly and like didn't know how, like, I mean, that kind of thing. But for the most part, like you actually do know how to parent, like it's not, there's a lot of instinctive parts to it. If you, like if you're genuinely invested in showing up, like, and in that sense, like what I tell people is like, don't sweat it as much of like, cause if you can get lost in the weeds of like the small stuff or, there was some stuff we were living in New York and I were on the Upper West Side at the time. And like, we went to some seriously hippy dippy parenting things. And like, I look back at that and I'm like, I don't think I used any of that because it just turned out that none of it was really applicable. And I didn't need to worry about that kind of stuff. Right. And I guess I would say is like, show up and be invested. Like if you're invested, they know. Right. Like, and I definitely regret every time my kid catches me like looking at a work email on my phone or something like that, right? Or like where I'm like busted. Like if you're in it, they're aware of it and it matters to them.
So this is my entire position already. So it's very life affirming to hear that.
Okay.
I will never tell my wife that you said any of that. She will throw me off the roof if I bring this up. So yeah, I am very much, I think we're kind of split, kind of like you and your ex, it sounds like. She is on, I think, book 17 right now in the prep process. And I am talking about Big 12 football at 9:00 at night. So that's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah. I'm not a worry in general. So like, it was like perfect for me. I was like, oh, I don't have to, like, I'm not going to do that anyway.
Same. Yes. Me neither.
That's good advice. No, like show up. I like at the end of the day, like the best piece of advice anyone could give is just, be there, be present. Yeah. And you're right. Like the kids can tell the difference between like when you were invested and when you're distracted. Like they know.
Yeah.
And they react to that accordingly. Like their mannerisms, their personality, their reaction to all of that is going to be dependent upon, what you're giving them and if you're giving them what they need. So no, that is awesome advice, Rob. Appreciate that. And Chase, I assume that she doesn't listen to this podcast, which is good. And hopefully this is definitely not the time to be like, hey honey, you really should listen to the show. Like we have a lot of fun on it. You should go listen to the podcast. This is not the week to push that. Maybe save that for later in the season.
She's so supportive. And she's like not a sports girl, doesn't come from a big sports family. And she really tries to soldier through. But when you're doing this much content, it would be a part-time job to try to consume all the stuff I am involved in and hosting and co-hosting. And so thankfully, I think she, somewhere around week 3, she was like, I believe in you. Good luck. Good job. I'm tapping out.
Fantastic. That's support. That's all you can ask for. Okay. Rob, you had a tweet out this week. Tweet or an X or whatever, Elon's.
Oh, they're still tweets. Like I refuse.
No. It's Twitter, their tweets, their retweets, replies, DMs, so on and so forth. I'm going to read this and share a couple thoughts, and then Rob, I want to let you expound upon this. The tweet that you wrote was, I think one of the most important things in college football is how slow fans and people that cover the sport are to realize that last season and this season showed a decline at the top of college football. 2023 Michigan could not have won a title from roughly 2017 through 2022. This year, teams are tracking lower. You're not the first person to kind of make some comments like this. I was listening to the Cover 2 podcast.
Yep.
They had some this week, and they had some similar thoughts kind of in this vein. And I shared this on Twitter and asked if anybody had any thoughts. And I think where I want you to kind of speak to is, are you viewing this as a this year kind of thing, or is this more of a commentary on college football, kind of the direction of it as a whole?
Now, that's a really interesting question, because like there's a cyclical nature anyway, right?
Yes.
And so, and I also, like, I think that we forget that we were living in the Nick Saban era sometimes, because it sort of became like the water we were living in, right? Like, I mean, it's just like, I mean, like you don't notice the ocean if you're just in the middle of the ocean. Like, I mean, at some point, like you've never had anything else. And he was there so long, and he was so good. And I like to talk about my backgrounds in economics. Like, entropy is a really fascinating idea, like, you know, systems breaking down. Like college football entropy, you know, there are a couple of forces that would, regardless of like, if you want, like, I think a lot of people point fingers at NIL, and I think there's some there, you know, and like the, you know, the remover of the transfer rules. But, you know, regular college football entropy was just like, you put a great staff together, and then your coordinators get hired to go move on. And then you got to make, and like I have to hire people in my job. Hiring's hard. And Nick Saban's superpower, like people always focus in on the recruiting, and that's true. But Nick Saban's other superpower was hiring. Like he rarely missed, right? And he did at the end with Tommy Rees, you know, an offensive coordinator. And I mean, and there was clearly a step down, a little bit of a step down from like Sarkisian to Bill O'Brien with what they were doing. But I think part of it is like, I want to point out is like, I think one of my main hypotheses here, and look, like beta rank is like, we need to be honest about what we're measuring here, because beta rank is a within season measure, and it's measuring all the teams essentially either against the average of the, like, you know, against the average team. Right. And so that average team may not be constant, but the distance from like, I'm much more confident in saying like the average team quality is probably more stable than like the handful of teams at the very top. I think we are more likely to see movement amongst that. Like I'm less of a believer in like, oh, the entirety of college football is rising up and the average team's just getting better, versus like, hey, probably like a handful of teams are probably not as good as they once were. And we've seen this before. I would say is like in the period from, so 2012 is a bit of a crazy outlier. Like Alabama had a wildly good defense. A&M that beat them that year had an incredible offense. Like as you're seeing this year with Cliff Kingsbury calling plays for the Commanders, like that dude can call plays when that's all he has to do. And the, but in between that, you have some pretty down years for how good the top overall teams were, and the top overall offenses were in particular. And then in 2017, it really starts to pick up again. Nick Saban realizes he has to have an offense to go with his, you know, normal defense. You have the 2019 true, almost crazy outlier year where you have LSU, who's bananas good. Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama were all incredible that year. We kind of come out of the crazy pandemic year. And then you have two really, really good Georgia teams, but they're really good in different ways. Like 22 Georgia has an outstanding defense, but they put up huge numbers, like numbers where they would have been favored, or I'm sorry, 21 Georgia, great defense. They would have been favored by over last year's Michigan team by double digits, perhaps. Then the next year seems like the defense takes a step back, but suddenly the offense is like, it's like a 2019 offense. They're so good. And then coming into last year, I actually commented about this when I was previewing teams coming into the year, that like, hey, keep an eye out, because with Mike Bobo back at Georgia as the offensive coordinator, and Tommy Rees now at Alabama, like you might see these teams take a step back. The talent's still there, just the quality of the play calling and the coaching and the scheme isn't going to be quite where it was. And you could see, and I said this in the Michigan preview, this could open the door for a team like Michigan. And I was like, I didn't pick Michigan to win it that year. I did, however, say like, hey, like the window could be opening for a team that is less designed to hit on all cylinders, doesn't recruit like Alabama, because that's the part that I think is like, I'm not arguing that like coaching matters and all, like is the determining factor. I am arguing that like what those teams were doing, they were hitting on all cylinders. They had recruiting, they had coaching, they had development. Now we have teams that are like, last year we had some teams that like maybe fell off a little bit on the coaching, maybe fell off a little bit on the development, right? Still, like you be crazy to argue like Alabama still didn't have great players. But now like you could see a team like Michigan come in and win, and that's what happened last year. This year, right now, we're tracking a little lower even than where we were last year. And look, you can make an argument, and I think it's reasonable that some of this could be like we've seen in the NFL where defenses are adjusting to take away more explosives, and that's going to bring back some of the offense as well. Like I think what I would say is like, when I make this point is like, I will often point to coordinator turnover, because I think if you were going to like pick the strongest flavor in the soup of things that's happening, I would say that's it. Cause that's often something that will undermine top teams in college football is the turnover at the coordinator positions or at the head coach. Maybe the head coach goes to the NFL. But like there are a number of factors also at work here. And so like people are always commenting, they're like, it's this one thing. And I'm like, it's probably a couple things, but like, I do think it's probably more teams at the top coming back to earth a little bit, because I just think that that's a more likely occurrence. If I was going to like weight out the probabilities than like the middle or the bottom, like the entire distribution shifting upward towards the top.
It's easier to move the tail than the full bell.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. And it's hard to stay at the top. That's the thing about entropy. It's hard to stay at the top.
I mean, yeah, look, you had massive head coach movement, which led to massive coordinator movement. Yeah. I don't think the quarterback play this year, the best quarterbacks aren't at the best teams this year. Right. And I don't think the quality of quarterback, I don't think there's a single quarterback who will get drafted this year who would have gone ahead of Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels last year. Yeah. And so all of that plays into everything we're talking about, and this is not a shot at Ashton Genty at all. He is absolutely incredible. Like he's the front runner for the Heisman, and he should be. Yeah. But we're talking about a running back. We don't ever talk about running back. We're talking about a non-Alabama running back. Like someone is so incredible.
Talking about a non-Power 4 running back.
There we go. Yeah. Well, really, it's just non-Alabama. Like it doesn't matter.
Or Travis Hunter, a wide receiver. I mean, like
a wide receiver DB who's just, and so. I know some people want to go the like it's 2007 again route. I'm not going to go with that, but I do think look, we have years where there are no great teams, and I think this is one of them. We have years where there's one great team. I think of LSU in 2019. There's years where we have 4 great teams, 3 great teams, and so I think it's just one of those years because there was so much change across college football, so much massive upheaval. From quarterbacks, head coaches, coordinators, defensive changes. There was so much change outside of NIL and transfer portal and blah 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 that you're going to get years like this, and it's fine. It's fun to have years where Georgia's Georgia. But it does feel a little more open and like no one's great. So we could have some weirdness, especially when you throw in a 12-team playoff where we're just like, no idea what's going to happen. That it's kind of fun to have this every once in a while, as opposed to, hey, it's Clemson, Alabama, year 3. Like, yay.
Well, yeah. And like the point I'm really trying to get, because like a lot of people are still talking about this playoff as if like these teams have no shot. And I'm like, listen, like 2019 Bama, 2018 Bama, doesn't lose to Vanderbilt no matter how bad they play, because they're so good to start with that they can have an abysmal game and still win that game. And that's the part of like the teams right now at the top are not so good that they could go out and just win a bad game, right? Like, and if they're playing a decent opponent, they're going to lose. I mean, it's like the, Michigan TCU, right? In that playoff game, like Michigan at that point, because like, I mean, and like they lost to TCU because the distance between them and TCU wasn't so big that they could afford to go out and have a really bad game. And that's what I think it's like when people are like, oh, we're going to have like these teams like this year, like, the top team could go out and like I mean, like Georgia and Oregon were both probably going to be favored over every team in last year's playoff if they had just managed to not have some, like for Oregon, it was 2 bad games against one opponent that was a bad matchup. And for Georgia, it was a bad game against Bama. But like they would have likely been favored over Michigan. Like, I mean, and I even saw some numbers that like from some, bookies that put out some like project that had them there. And I'm like, I would have had them there. But even last year, you have teams that like, they weren't good enough to win a bad game.
That's okay. It's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. And then I look at that, I'm like, that's kind of exciting because then you don't know what's going to happen.
And I loved your Saban point. Like this idea when people were like, well, Georgia's now the new Alabama. Like, no, they're not. Like, yeah, they recruited at a crazy level, but he's not Saban.
Right.
It's not the same. Like the corners, it's not the same. Like, it's not the same. We will not have another Saban for who knows how long. And that's a good thing. Like it's fun to have that kind of team for a little while, but he did it for so long that it's also kind of a breath of fresh air to him being gone actually does provide a little bit more parity in the sport of now suddenly 2 or 3 teams that can rise up because there's not Saban there to butt your head up against quite so much.
Yeah, I mean, well, people always forget, like, I mean, because there's no outlet, right? Like, there's no outlet to get Saban out, like, unless he just retired because he already didn't like the NFL one bit, right? Like, there was nowhere he was going to go other than would like to go play some golf, right? Like, people forget because like people would be like, oh, Alabama's this, like, Alabama hired Shula's kid and bombed. Right. Like, I mean, you can go 6-6 at Alabama. It's very doable. Right. People act like Alabama's like invincible. And I'm like, Nick Saban did that.
No. Okay. Well, Rob, that was awesome. Thank you so much. This is a fun conversation. It's a fun thing to track throughout the season. It's been a fun year. I think it's going to continue to be a fun year. So before we get to this week's picks, we got to look back at last week. Chase, we did not have a guest, and congratulations. You went 6-1, by far the best week anyone has had here on the show this season. I will run through it for you. Hit on the under 51.5 in TCU Houston. Hit on the over 44.5 in Iowa State Baylor. Hit on Florida plus 2.5 versus UCF. Hit on Arizona State minus 2.5 versus Kansas. Hit on Texas Tech plus 6.5 versus Arizona. And the Navy minus 10 covered quite easily. 6-1 on the week gets you to 29-30 on the season. Sir, just bravo.
A little bit due for that, but let's get a couple more. Let's get a couple more weeks before we take any giant victory laps, because 29-30 still not quite. I mean, I know we're betting every game, but not quite up to the standard.
It's okay. Light week again. I had a winning week at 4-3, and I will take it. I will absolutely take it. Hit on the under 51.5 at TCU Houston. We both missed. We both missed on OSU minus 3. The Big 12 bet of the week's not doing great. Iowa State minus 11.5 versus Baylor. Hit on the Arizona State minus 2.5 versus Kansas, and hit on the over 35.5 in Navy Air Force. Yes, an over in a game between service academies has officially happened. This is truly the wildest year we've had in a long time. The other misses were the over 61.5 in UCF Florida and the over 64 in Arizona Texas Tech. Neither of those got close. I'm gonna I just can't hit the over unders this year. It's just I don't feel like they're as easy to read as they used to be in the Big 12, and I think more of it's trending under than it usually does. And so it's just an interesting thing to keep a track of across college football, especially as the defenses continue to adjust. And this is a Big 12 conference where we talk about all the time. The Big 12 is a conference of experimentation. The Big 12 goes and figures out how to coach against what everyone else is doing, and then the SEC steals it and puts 5-star athletes into it, and then the Big 12 has to go back and adjust again. So it's all right. 4-3 on the week, 27-32 on the season. Winning week, I will take. I'm ready to do another week. So Gentlemen, we've got 5 Big 12 games to pick this week. Y'all ready to go?
Do it.
Excellent. I love it. All right. As we get started, I do want to note our good friend Kelly Ford likes to put out his projected 1-possession regular season games remaining each week. Big 12 fans, I hope that you have refilled your heart medication because, what did I say? 12 of the 16 teams in the conference have at least 5 one-score games left on their schedule, projection-wise. Colorado has 7, which I think is every game on their schedule. BYU, West Virginia, UCF, Arizona State, Arizona, OSU with 6. So, it's you can't be a Big 12 fan with a weak heart. You just can't. You got to have a strong constitution to be a fan of this conference, and certainly some good numbers to do some betting. So let's get underway. We go in chronological order as we do every single week. We start with a Friday night showdown. It's Big 12 after dark on a Friday, 9:30 p.m. kickoff Central Time, God's Time on ESPN. Arizona State, one of the 2 biggest surprise teams in the Big 12 this year, hosting Utah, coming off of a idle week. Still not sure what's going to happen with the quarterback situation there. We'll talk about that, obviously. At the moment, Utah is a 4.5-point favorite. Total in this one's around 45. Rob, as our guest this week, you are up first, sir. What would you like here?
I like the Utes in this game. Yeah, one of the things that I think with this game in particular is Arizona State, they've been a surprise, but the schedule's been pretty easy. They've had a pretty, the Wyoming ended up being a lot worse than that we thought. And then the same went for Mississippi State is horrendously bad. And so it is a surprise, and you should take the wins when you can get them. But they're tracking about where we projected them at the beginning of the season. They're at number 76 overall in beta rank. Utah's at number 55. Utah's offense, though, is a disaster. We've certainly seen this with Cam Rising out. I don't expect him to play. But the Utah defense is the one thing you can kind of hang your hat on in here. They're at number 17 coming in right now. They're at 13 in effective pass, 26 in effective rush. Arizona State right now is a real heavy run team. They're at 24 in effective rush and 88 in effective pass, but they're only at 62 offensively. And I've got this at Utah. I mean, and I've got it pretty close, actually. I've got it in the naive spread, which is just a posterior distribution, about 4.5 in the game. I've got it a little closer in the predicted score, where I actually have ASU a little bit ahead, but I like Utah in this game. I think that they find a way to salt it away.
All right, so you want Utah plus the points?
Yeah.
All right, Utah minus 4.5 is all yours. Chase, sir, you're up next.
Yeah, I bet this pretty much right away. Virgin opener, Utah -3. I just thought, clearly the better team. You're getting them off a bye. We know about the offensive problems as long as Cam Rising is on the sidelines. And like Rob said, if you're betting this game under the assumption that, hey, I think Cam Rising is going to come back, you're probably making a mistake. Bet the game because you're confident that the overall team and roster and coaching is better on the Utah side of this. So I'm laying the points here as well. A couple of stats. Utah 6-3 against the spread off of a bye since 2016. They've covered 8 of their last 10 games against Arizona State. It just feels to me like this is one of the biggest positive regression games of the entire Week 7 slate, not just in the Big 12, but all of college football, because of that Arizona game that we talked about, and the market maybe downgrading Utah slightly off of what's ultimately going to be an aberrational performance where they are essentially -5 in turnover margin because of all the 4th down missed conversions. I think we're going to see a positive bounce in the right direction, and this is a really nice buy-low spot for the Utes. So I'll be laying the points as well with Utah on the road.
So the projections are all over the map. As Rob mentioned, beta is about 4.5 Utah. SP Plus has Utah by 6.5, and Kelly Ford's got Utah with a 63% chance to win. On the flip side, Tishu has Arizona State by about a little over 1, FEI has Arizona State by less than a half, and Parker has Arizona State by about 5.5. So we're kind of all over the map as to what side of this to take. I agree on the best unit on the field in this game is going to be Utah's defense. And the offense is not great. Now, Arizona State doesn't turn the ball over that much. They do force turnovers pretty well. And the defense has had multiple defensive scores. Here's the deal. I will believe, and I keep saying this and I'll keep hammering it, I will believe that Cam Rising is going to play a game for the University of Utah again this season when I see him out there on the field under center taking a snap when the game is actually underway. Until then, I'm just going to assume he's not going to play. And so I have a hard time betting Utah by more than a field goal when Cam Rising's not playing because that offense is bad. Now, look, they've had a week off to prepare. Arizona State's playing on a short week. They played Saturday. I thought they're playing on a Friday night. Albeit at home. I'm really tempted to take the under because I do think Utah's defense is going to do a good job, and I do not trust Utah's offense. I don't think the run game's that good, and Isaac Wilson is playing quarterback for Utah. But look, I like Arizona State. I get it. I think they're a frustrating team to play. I think they're a plucky team. I think Cam Scadaboo's pretty good and would be able to break some runs against Utah. I get Arizona State at home against a Cam Risingless Utah as a 4.5-point dog. I'm gonna go against you guys here and take ASU to get the cover. I put one of my $1 bets because that's how much I bet on games is $1. I put $1 down on Arizona State. I'm real tempted when this game kicks off, if I don't see Cam Rising out there, and I don't think I will, to put another $1 down just on ASU to straight up get the win. So I'm going to take Arizona State and say that the magic continues for the Sun Devils at home on Friday night.
I'm going to break in here just on some line cleanup. ESPN Bet actually has a -4 available right now. And I don't know what number you are looking at for the Arizona State side of this, but FanDuel is currently sitting at
That's a
5.5.
5.5?
5.5. Yeah. Now, I don't know.
My good.
I don't know how much 5.5 is going to be terribly valuable for you, considering the splits on 5, but it is there for you if you want it.
I mean, I'll take it. So I'll give you guys -4, and I'll take 5.5. Because if I can get it, again, if you can bet it, you can have it. And I like that. All right, next game up on the list, we move to Saturday. Again, it's a light week for the Big 12 this week. Not a lot going on, but a lot of really interesting games. At 2:30 p.m. God's time on ESPN2, UCF hosting Cincinnati in an AAC Classic, now a Big 12 showdown. They both say they don't like each other, but neither wants to call this a rivalry. I disagree. Now, I didn't make a fake trophy this week. Normally, this probably would have been the fake trophy game. We have the actual Riot Bowl with a real trophy, so we'll just go ahead and leave that one for this week's trophy game. But it's still an interesting one because it's two fan bases that do not like each other and two teams in some very interesting situations on Saturday. So at the moment, where did the game? Oh, I refreshed it and I lost my place. Hold on. Oh, I love doing this live. UCF is a 3-point favorite at home against Cincinnati. Total is about 58.5 across the board. Chase, you're up first, sir. What would you like?
So I kind of want to reiterate something I pointed out last week before I took the Florida side of that bet. UCF's offense is really not trending in the correct direction. I won't do the full walkthrough that I did last week, but just to underscore this, Week 1, 57 points against New Hampshire. FCS school, understood. But since then, the point totals have been 45, 35, 21, 13. There is probably, at some point, you're probably going to go back up, right? You can only go so much farther down from 13. But it feels to me like, I don't know if this is defenses adjusting to what they're doing schematically. I don't know if something is not right with the offensive staff or if it's a health thing with some of the players. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is. I know that UCF's offense is not what we hoped it would be, at least right now. Maybe they can get it fixed again. I think that's more so where I want to play this game instead of trying to figure out what side of UCF Cincinnati I want to be on, because it feels to me from a spread perspective like this is the time to buy back into UCF to get them against a Cincinnati team that on paper they should be better than at a reasonable cost like -3. But a little bit like last week when I said that the Florida thing was kind of a gut call, something about Cincinnati +3 kind of just looks like it could be maybe the sharp, low-key side of this game. So I think I'm going to play the under and kind of attack that dwindling UCF offensive firepower. So the number I have here is 58.5. I do think that is slightly down from open. So it seems like maybe there's some slight sharp play that's ticking that number down just a tiny bit. So give me under 58.5.
I like that. I like that pick. When this number was announced, my brain said Cincinnati. And I get it. Look, UCF has not looked good for 2 straight weeks. They got thumped by Colorado. They got handled pretty well by a Florida team that coach is, probably done at the end of the season, if not already. And now it's just, a waiting game. The offensive line has not looked good. KJ Jefferson does not seem like he can throw the ball, or they're not asking him to, or they don't want him to. I'm not sure what that's about. You throw in the fact that, hey, guess what? There's a hurricane that's like a Cat 5, one of the worst storms ever that's going to blow through the state of Florida. Now, it's supposed to be out of there and gone. The weather should be gone by Saturday, but the impact of that is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. So that should play. I have a hard time thinking that's not going to play into this a little bit. By the way, on Sunday, UCF kicker Colton Boomer became the 6th player to choose to redshirt this season with the intent to transfer. That's within the last 2 weeks. That joins wide receiver Xavier Townsend, defensive end Caven Call, offensive tackle Wes Dorsey, and safety William Wells. So that's not, it might mean nothing. This is a trend we're seeing. This is the time of year to start go ahead and get your name in there. It could be a sign of maybe things internally aren't great. Cincinnati is a lot better than we expected. As Chase and I have talked about in this podcast, we were off on Sorsby. He's been a solid player for Cincinnati. They have looked like a competent football team.
I don't know if we were both off on Sorsby there,
way
Phillip.
better. I think we neither one of us was real excited about him. Okay, all right. I'll give you a little bit. I'm not don't come in here like you're like he's going to be the best quarterback. No, okay. UCF is 102nd in passing yards allowed at 247 yards per game. UCF also has only 3 sacks in 5 games so far this season. I think Sorsby is going to be able to have a successful game against a UCF defense coached by Ted Roof, who should probably not be coaching defenses anymore. I kind of like Cincinnati to go on the road and win this outright. I think UCF might be a mess. You got 6 players transferring. You've lost to a game in Colorado who you had a company making buttons for 3 weeks before that game was played. They had that game circled. Then you get a game against Florida who will never play you, and you're thrilled. This is going to have regular season matchup. And you put on that performance against the most beatable Florida team you're going to have in a very long time. I don't feel good about this UCF team at all. I'm going to have to see something really good to get me to buy back in, because right now I'm selling all of my UCF stock because they have not looked good. Again, you had props for coming back the way you did against TCU. You still had to come back on a TCU team that just lost to Houston last week. So I'm taking Cincinnati because I think Cincinnati might just be, I think Cincinnati is the better team. And look, the hurricane stuff, I just have a hard time thinking that's not going to emotionally have an impact on what's going on out there. So Cincinnati +3.5, I'll take it. Rob?
Yeah, so if it weren't for the hurricane, I'd actually take the over here. But the hurricane is, as I'm sure, a lot of sharp, the potential for a very wet field or any kind of weather hangover. These are two, the Cincinnati offense is really surprising right now. I don't know if they're going to finish as high as they are right now because we still have a lot of data to come in, but right now they're number 12 overall in beta rank. They're really good at effective pass. They're number 13 in throwing the ball around. They struggle a little bit with explosive drives. So they're a little bit less explosive. They rely a little bit more on efficiency, but UCS defense is at 66 overall. that's not great. But you flip it around and you get Cincinnati's defense, which is their Achilles heel. They're at 91. I mean, these are two really bad power 4 defenses. UCS offense, you guys hit on the head. They've been coming back to earth. They're kind of a middle of the power 4 unit right now, 31 overall. They can't throw the ball nearly at all. They're at 104 in effective pass versus number 6 in effective rush. I'm going to go with Cincinnati here and take the points here as well, just because of everybody's kind of opted out of UCF. It feels like people are abandoning ship a little bit. They're already not that great at special teams. Losing your place kicker, particularly if he's any good, means a lot in college football. And I do think Cincinnati's going to be able to score some points. Their offense has been really surprising. I'm kind of excited to see what they look like over the season, because I didn't have them projected offensively literally anywhere in this neighborhood. This is pure this season data driving this.
All right. I do want to shout out, of course, Sons of UCF, our UCF show here at the 1012 Network. Go check them out. I reached out to them today to find out what are the best places if you want to donate to try and help those who are going to be impacted by the hurricane there in Florida. They mentioned the Red Cross. I know some people get weird about donating to the Red Cross. They want to feel like the money's going somewhere more direct. They mentioned volunteerflorida.org. So if you want to donate to try and help those, because again, this is nasty. This is going to be rough. So if you want to try and send some money to help those who are going to be impacted by the hurricane in Florida, Red Cross, always an option. And typically you can tell them where you want the funds to go. If you want a different option, volunteerflorida.org is the place that our friends at Sons of UCF said should be places to go and make your donation to. Okay. Next on our list. Oh, I'm excited for this one. This is a weird and fun game. I've got this one circled. Big noon show, headed to Provo to face off against, I think, as much as Arizona State's the surprise team, I think BYU is the other big surprise team in the Big 12 this year. They are going to host Arizona. 3:00 kickoff there in Provo. Like I said, this one's on Fox. It's not the big noon kickoff game, but it does have big noon show in town. Again, this is going to be fun. BYU, I got all over the place. I got a 3.5, I got a 4.5, I got a 4 as far as BYU as a favorite. Total in this one around 49, 48.5 as well. I am up first. I'll run through the projections. SP Plus, everyone's got BYU. Let me begin by saying everyone has BYU projected in this one. We got SP Plus at BYU minus 3.4, T-Shoe at BYU minus 3.5. FEI has BYU by 7.5. I won't steal Rob's thunder. I'll let him mention what he has BYU at. Parker's got BYU at 3.5, and Kelly Ford gives BYU a 68% chance to win this one. Everyone's on the side of BYU. I get the arguments against BYU and how kind of fluky they have been. They have not been a team that has put opponents away. They've kind of played with their food, and I don't think it's a matter of that. I think it's just a matter of this is a team that is playing hard. I think they've got a really good defensive coordinator who's not going to be there for too much longer, as good as he's been. And it's not a night game. We all know if BYU's in Provo at night, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, preview for next week's game, you take BYU. But man, I get it. With Arizona, I don't trust the run game. I have yet to see anyone step up if you're able to shut down T-Mac. And while I like Fafita's ability to get wild, I just don't particularly like this Arizona team. This is not last year's Arizona team. It's just not. The number is low enough. I'm real tempted to take the under in this one. I really am. But at this point, I'm so scared of totals because they keep doing me in every week. I'm just going to ride with the home team. BYU is 5-0 against the spread with a cover margin of 16.4 points this season. I just think there's some very, with this season as a whole, there's a little bit of magic at the teams in the Big 12 who are surprising everybody, like Arizona State, like BYU. So I will take BYU minus 3.5 in this one. I don't think this is the game that gets them. I don't. I think I could be wrong, but I think we're setting up for a holy war of all holy wars. That's my gut. My gut's dumb, and it doesn't felt well lately, but I'll still listen to it. Rob, what would you like, sir?
Ooh, this is a really tough one. Well, because like I think if you look at the numbers, like you have to factor in that like the first two FBS games and including an FCS game that Arizona's played, they had a different OC calling plays. Like Dino Babers has been relieved to play calling duties for a reason. Now that worked out really well when they went into Utah. Like it looked good. Last week it did not. Like there was a lot of it felt like reversion to form. They are clearly struggling to run the football. Offensively right now, they don't seem to be able to find the easy pass at all. Right. Offensively, I mean, BYU's not a really good offense. They're at 52 overall in beta rank. Arizona's not much better as a defense. They're at 45 overall. There's not a huge advantage there for either team. I think the tale there is going to be told by Arizona. Still got a really good secondary, even with the Stukes injury. Is Arizona doesn't have a really strong defensive front. Is can they get pressure? The other side of the ball, BYU's got a really solid defense, number 7 overall in beta rank. Arizona, which was a real offense first team last year with Jed Fish calling plays, they're at 42 overall in beta rank right now. They are highly reliant on explosive plays, and BYU just doesn't give up a lot of those. It pains me to take BYU here because I have an undergraduate degree from Arizona, but unfortunately, I gotta take the Mormons here. Like this is just not this Arizona team just feels a little bit lost in the sauce, and I'm not sure they're gonna figure it out.
All right, BYU minus 3.5 with me. Chase?
I'm also on BYU. It still feels to me, as I was referencing with the Utah Arizona State game, it feels like we have a couple weeks of tilted market because of that Arizona Utah result. And so I see this in part as an opportunity to go against Arizona where it's being valued too highly. This should be Arizona +6. You know, this should be something closer to a touchdown, given how good BYU has been and frankly how bad Arizona's been outside of the one game against Utah where they shot lightning with all the fourth down stops. So I see this as a way to get BYU at a more reasonable price than they should be offered for in the market. So I'll lay the points with BYU.
I will note, because this matters in the Big 12, shout out to teamrankings.com. BYU, the number 2 ranked luckiest team in college football this year, which I think kind of lines up with that. It's an interesting thing to keep a track of. Reminder, luck is not a negative thing when we say it. It's just when preparation meets opportunity, and BYU has been doing that. Man, I seriously, the defensive coordinator hired, I just forgot his name, which is a terrible thing, and I should have Googled it instead of luck, but whatever. That hire
Jay Hill, isn't it? It's Jay Hill.
Yes.
Like
yes.
he was the Weber State head coach, and then gave that up to go be the DC at
He was awesome
BYU.
at Weber State, I can tell you that, as a former FCS reporter. The guy is very good.
I don't think he's going to be in Provo long. As good a job he's done this year, whether that's a bump up DC job or he's got a FBS head coaching job soon. He's done a wonderful job at BYU this year. Speaking of doing a wonderful job, that would be Charlie Hustle, sponsors here on the 10-12 podcast and for the entire 10-12 network. If you want to be the best dressed Big 12 fan this season, then you have to go to charliehustle.com. Why? Because they love the Big 12 as much as we do. Look, it's starting to get cold. It's not full-blown sweater weather, okay? It's not. It is, though, long sleeve. It is make sure my daughter has a jacket when she goes to kindergarten in the morning so that when she has her first round playground time, recess, that she's not cold out there. You know, she's going to run around and she's 5 and she shouldn't get cold. She should just have that blood flowing. Meanwhile, I am now 40 and getting older and get more cold because I am a frail, aged old man who feels my life force slowly draining from me every day. So let me just say, as someone who has never really cared for hoodies, I'm not a pullover hoodie guy. I never have been because I've always been real skinny and they come out kind of baggy and then you get the tapered part at the bottom and then it rides up on me. And I don't like doing that. However, their hoodies are really good. I have one, and it's one of the first hoodies I've ever gotten, and it's fantastic, and it's incredibly comfortable. It's super comfortable. So I'm going to be wearing a hoodie this year. I can't decide if this is just like I'm a dad now, and so I need to 40 years old and I gotta go buy some Skechers. I really don't want to. I'm sorry if either of you enjoy Skechers. It's not a knock. My father-in-law loves them, but I'm just not at Skechers age yet. But if you want to be the most comfortable college football, college basketball, college sports fan of your team, be it Arizona, Cincinnati, Colorado, Baylor, Kansas State, go to charliehustle.com. Go shop around. Use our promo code 101215, TEN1215. That gets you 15% off all non-sale items. Again, they got all 16 Big 12 teams and more beyond that. Absolutely incredible gear for everybody. If it's on sale, don't have to worry about the promo code. They've got great sales all the time. But if it's not, 101215, 15% off all non-sale items. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. All right, moving down the line. Ooh. It's the Riot Bowl, folks. This game's trophy is a gas can, a red plastic gas can with stickers all over it. Okay? Because that's exactly the kind of thing you would expect between two fan bases who are either drinking Busch Light and draining every town they enter out of it, or West Virginia who's drinking moonshine or just straight gasoline from the gas tank. Whatever they can get their hands on. Chase, is that accurate or is that offensive? Is that
well? You know,
fair?
we do sometimes shorthand moonshine as gasoline here in the mountains.
Okay.
So you know
that makes sense. That's what I thought. Look, you know what? Multi-purpose things are good. You don't want single-purpose things. You want multi-purpose things. It saves you a lot of room, or so I've learned as I have to manage a garage. At the moment, the Cyclones on the road in West Virginia are a 3-point favorite. By the way, this game is a 7 p.m. kickoff on Fox in Morgantown. It's the first of 2 straight night games against some marquee Big 12 opponents. I know West Virginia fans are jacked for this one. Total at 53.5, depending upon where you shop. Rob, I believe you are up first, sir. What would you like here?
Ooh, this is a tough game. I previewed this on the Saturday 6. Look, I like the Iowa State offense. They're really explosive heavy right now, though. They're at 81 in drive efficiency, 18 overall in explosive drives. They do a really good job with negative drives. They avoid 3-and-outs and turnovers. They get a West Virginia defense that is still struggling. They're at 64 overall. You can absolutely put up points. They struggle to defend the pass, in particular at number 98 in effective pass. So I like the Cyclones to be able to put up points here. But this West Virginia offense, which I think a lot of people did not expect to carry over some of last year's success, has been really good, and they run the ball really well. They're at number 8 in effective rush versus 62 in effective pass. This Iowa State defense is pretty good. They're at 25 overall, but the reason I think to potentially like West Virginia, and I am going to take the Mountaineers here, is that Iowa State struggled to stop their run. They're at 39 in effective rush. I think West Virginia is going to be able to move the ball pretty well. They are at home. There's also a pretty good split in special teams here. Number 12 in special teams for West Virginia. Like place kicking plays a major role in special teams in college football. Like it's not like the NFL where all the kickers are pretty much interchangeable and excellent. Having a good kicker in college matters. And Iowa State is at 58. I feel like West Virginia is going to finish +1 on turnovers and come away with the win.
Chase, I know this game is near and dear to your heart.
Look, man, I'd love to see the Mountaineers win this game. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I would love to win this game. West Virginia looked great in Stillwater last week. But Phillip said it best to me on Saturday. I had a wonderful prologue about, man, this is the offense I thought we were going to see all season. I know how talented this offense can be if it plays. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Phillip, Oklahoma State just might suck, though. And that's it. That's the whole analysis of last week's game. You can look at it's a lot of things I said last week. You can look at West Virginia and make an optimistic case on why they are a Big 12 contender. Or you can be a little bit more skeptical and say, look, they do some things well when things are rolling in their favor, when they're playing with the head of steam, when they're playing from ahead. They're one of the most dangerous teams in the conference because of that run game. They can dominate time of possession and run the ball down your throat as good as anybody. But, man, they're just so up and down, and I still think what I said last week, they make the easy things hard. And it's hard to beat a really good team like Iowa State when those are your challenges. So the history, post Rich Rod history of West Virginia football is when they get the good team. Morgantown is a hard place to play. It gets loud, it's crazy. Very few fan bases, I think, love their program like West Virginia fans do. All that true. But when they get the big team, the top 15 team that comes to Morgantown, and there are real stakes, the winner of this game is going to have an inside track to the Big 12 championship game. That's math. That's a fact. Look at the schedules. I'm just having a real hard time thinking it's going to be not just West Virginia that pulls that out, but this particular West Virginia team. I think they do some things well, but they're also very, very flawed. And I think Iowa State has a lot fewer flaws. So I'll take West Virginia minus the 3, or I'm sorry, I'll take Iowa State minus the 3 here. And I'll go one step further as kind of a little bit of broader commentary. I actually think it's better for the Big 12 if Iowa State wins this game. We need a little less chaos. We need some established programs that are conventionally recognized as good to be in the mix for the sake of the conference. If it's November 15th and the top of this conference is West Virginia, Texas Tech, and BYU, that is not good for the Big 12. And it's nothing against those teams. It's nothing against those fans. Obviously, as a West Virginia guy, I would love to be in that position. But when you look at like the media and how the national names talk about this sport, it's slow to change and perhaps a tiny bit lazy. There is a status quo bias that affects a lot of these college sports and college rankings. You know the scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker is talking to Harvey Dent in the hospital and he says, if I blow up a truckload of soldiers, nobody panics because it's all according to plan. Like that's kind of what college football is. If all of a sudden Texas Tech is 5-0 in the Big 12 and is good, there is like a 5-week lag on everybody else outside of the Big 12 figuring that out because it's unconventional and it's new. So if the Big 12 title game is like BYU against the Week 13 winner of West Virginia at Texas Tech, the Big 12 is probably a one-bid playoff conference. If it's Iowa State and Utah, and I don't know, throw like Colorado in there, not because they've been good, but because they're a popular, we all know what's going on with Colorado. Then I think that's a totally different look for the conference, and its playoff fortunes are really different. So as a fan, obviously, I hope, West Virginia finds a way to win this game. As a Big 12 stakeholder, I think I can acknowledge it's probably better if Iowa State wins.
It's a great point. I'm glad that you said it, not me, so that everyone will be mad at you and tell me how much they hate you.
It is what it is, man.
Iowa State is 5-0 this season. If they win this game, they'll be 6-0 for the first time since 1938. I was wrong last week. The last time they were 5-0 is 1980. I got the date wrong. I got this one right. The last time they were 6-0 is 1938. So Matt Campbell about to do something that ain't been done in a very, 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 very long time, nearly 100 years. Iowa State's covered 3 straight as a road favorite. Rob, I'm going to push back on the Iowa State's rushing defense isn't that great. Now, look, I don't have the advanced stats numbers. I just have the holding teams to 138 yards per game on the ground, and has allowed just 2 rushing touchdowns. The reason that I say that,
I mean, they did play Iowa, who is still fairly ineffectual on offense.
yes, is to Chase's point. If West Virginia can run the ball well, they look like they did against OSU. If they cannot run the ball well and rely more on Garrett Green's arm to win the game, I'm going to take the opponent every time. And I'm sorry, like Garrett Green can have a big game and the rushing attack can do well, but if they can't run the ball especially well, if they can't get CJ Donaldson going, if they can't get Jaheim White going, and it is on Garrett Green, it's a combination of Garrett Green and a wide receiving core that doesn't impress me all that much. Meanwhile, West Virginia is giving up 243 2.5 yards per game through the air, and is about to face the best receiving duo in the Big 12 and one of the better receiving duos in the country. Owen and Rocco back at quarterback, who, look, he's not the best quarterback in the Big 12, but he is solid, and he has two really good weapons to throw to. Really good weapons can make a mediocre quarterback look better. I'm not saying he's a mediocre quarterback. I'm just making a point, Iowa State fans. I know you're all going to listen to this and complain about some comment. Take it the wrong way in the Ride Right Natty Light Discord. I love you all. You're all wonderful.
Becht, Phillip.
All of that
Becht,
said.
I'm sure this is going to be talked about this weekend, especially during the game broadcast. Becht's father played for West Virginia, and he did not get offered by West Virginia. So you think maybe that could be on his mind on Saturday? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, isn't his father being honored or something too at this game?
That is correct. Yes.
I wonder why that's being done this particular week. Oh, man, that is some steamy stuff. Absolutely steamy stuff. I'll run through the numbers real quick. SP Plus has Iowa State -3. TSU has West Virginia by 0.5 point. FEI has Iowa State -6.1. Beta has Iowa State minus roughly 0.5 point. Parker's got Iowa State by 11.83. There's our outlier. And Kelly Ford gives Iowa State a 52% chance to win. The thing that concerns me for Iowa State is if you've really looked outside of the Arkansas State game, Iowa State's offense has started slow in every game this season. It has been a slow start. It has looked a lot better in the second half once they've kind of made the adjustments and figured things out. I think this game is close early. I think Iowa State's offense figures it out and runs away with it in the second half. I think they cover. There is a 2.5 at FanDuel, Chase. You and I get the Cyclones -2.5.
Well, that just feels like stealing if there's a 2.5.
I know, right?
I'm excited though because Iowa State hasn't played anybody yet. Like even Iowa's not that good. I'm excited to see them actually play somebody.
No, the schedule, like outside of Iowa's the best team they played. And like at some point, and we keep saying this, the fact that they're running out like a scarecrow and a sixth man walk on at linebacker at this point is going to catch up with them. And maybe it's this week. I'm not super concerned about Garrett Green taking advantage of linebacker depth the way I do some other teams on the Iowa State schedule, especially as we get towards the back half of the season. But it is going to catch up to them at some point. It is a real
I just want to emphasize, I cannot tell you how many times I have taken the 5-hour drive to Morgantown from Central Virginia because there's a top 12 team coming to the town. And this is the one, guys. We're going to play our best game. We're going to seize control of the conference. We're going to get back to the days of Pat White and Steve Slayton, Noel Devine and Rich Rod. This is the one. Never happens. It never happens.
Look, Chase, trust the climb, man. Trust the climb.
It's a jagged climb, man. I am a trust the climb guy, but that doesn't mean we're going to win this game. We're, Kansas State, I'm interested. That one we might get. I really do think we could get that one. I don't think we can win this game.
Speaking of the Wildcats, last game, Big 12 game on the slate, 9:15 p.m. kickoff. There's one every week, so maybe this is the one you want to watch, and I do. On ESPN in Boulder, an old Big 8 rivalry that doesn't have a rivalry name or a trophy, which seems like a massive miss between two fan bases that absolutely do not like each other. Now, I don't know now because no, they don't like each other. They don't. And maybe it's more Kansas State, but they don't like each other. These two, no. And I mean like Colorado fans, not like Deion fans. Deion fans are just Deion fans. Like Colorado fans and Kansas State fans, not fans of each other. Oh, this is a good one for 9:15. Like this might do the best TV numbers of 9:15 games, unless it's a blowout, and I don't know that it will be. At the moment, Kansas State, a 4-point favorite on the road in Boulder, total at 56.5, pretty much across the board. Chase, you're up first, sir. What would you like?
Did I hear that correct? Did you say that might do the best numbers of the 9:15 games?
Yeah, I did. I did say that. There's a hot take.
A lot of stiff competition there in the 9:15 bracket.
The late games.
I like a side here. I like Colorado plus the 4.5. I could give you the trend that last year the Buffs were 3-0 against the spread as a home dog. I think that may be a little misleading since they were likely getting bigger numbers by the end of the year because of how the season was going. This is a smaller number against a good team, but I have talked before about how Kansas State's defense does not do a great job traveling away from Manhattan. And I think Boulder is going to be really rocking after Coach Prime comes home with that UCF win in pocket. Let's add in the fact that Kansas State is 0-4 against the number after its last 4 bye weeks. To repeat something I said a couple weeks ago when Colorado went to Orlando, I'm just not interested in laying points with them. But when they're a dog, they're an interesting side because of what the offense can do, because the back door is open, and because I think the prime smoke stuff, I think maybe it plays a little better when they're the dog and they're catching advantage instead of playing from a position where they're supposed to win, and they're supposed to win by margin. So I like the Colorado side here for a lot of angles.
Everyone's on Kansas State, which makes complete sense by the numbers. We've got as low as 3.5 from Tishu. FEI's got the biggest number at Kansas State, minus just over 12. Kelly Ford with a 55% chance at Kansas State, which is fairly close. There's 3 things I'm going to give you before I give you my answer. Number 1, Kansas State is 0-5 as a road favorite against the spread in their last 5 games. Last 5 games as road favorites. Kansas State's defense is ranked 114th in the country in forcing 3 and outs at 22.2%. Kansas State's offense is ranked 115th in the country in offensive 3 and outs at 40.4%. I don't trust that Colorado's run game is actually figured out like it kind of looked against UCF. I think that was more a UCF thing. I think Kansas State's defense is going to make Colorado look like it did when it didn't want to run the ball. The Kansas State's defensive weakness is the secondary. And as far as I know, Shedeur Sanders is still the quarterback. And they've got good pass-catching weapons, including Travis Hunter, and not just Travis Hunter. I remember what happened in Provo. Everyone gets Provo'd at night. It's just, especially late at night, that just happens. But I agree with Chase. Like, it's either Colorado or stay away. And the fact that Colorado is more than a field goal dog here, and we got 4.5 at FanDuel, so that's what we're going to take. Chase, I hate that we're agreeing so much this week, but I agree. Like, I think Colorado's the right side here. And look, Kansas State may prove us wrong, and maybe that game against Oklahoma State, I mean, look, Avery Johnson looked awesome against OSU. Of course, OSU probably just sucks now. Maybe that was Avery Johnson's a grand awakening game, and now he's got it all figured out. He hasn't been as good on the road. As you mentioned, the defense. I just think Colorado is the side here. Like, and that's all. Colorado plus 4.5. Rob?
I'm going to go the other way. And so the BYU game was a lot of turnovers. I mean, Kansas State, and you guys mentioned there's a lot of luck in that. There is a non-random component to turnovers, but like getting that many in a game is a lot of luck. Kansas State right now, they're at number 14 in beta rank. Their offense is really good. They're number 16 overall. They can't throw the ball. Avery Johnson can't throw the ball, saves life, right? Like what they do really well, and he does really well and adds in, they run the ball really well. They're at number 5 in effective rush. They get a Colorado defense that is kind of surprisingly decent. They're at 36 overall, but they struggle to stop the run. They're at 51 in effective rush. That's not necessarily the number you want to have coming into here. You're right in that the Kansas State passing defense is not really good. They're at number 55 overall in beta rank. Colorado's at number 12 in effective pass, but Colorado's offense has been beating up on really, really bad competition since that Nebraska game. Everybody else that they played on their schedule has a horrible defense. So I actually think this Kansas State team, I like Joe Klanderman, their defensive coordinator. They are largely able to use the field to their advantage. I think if they are able to avoid giving up big plays here, and force Colorado to have to drive the field, and I think Kansas State's going to put up some points. They're going to be able to run the ball. I think Avery Johnson could have, 150 yards on the ground in this game. I think that is how Kansas State gets over here. I like Kansas State here. I think I like Colorado, like UCF, their defense is a lot worse than we thought they were.
Don't hire Ted Roof, folks. Just don't hire Ted Roof. No. Okay, we wrap the show up same way every week with a non-Big 12 pick, any game of your choosing. I am up first, I believe. So here's the stat that I will throw before I give my pick. Looking at the Big Ten, we're going to the Big Ten. Per John Wilner, y'all know that name. Teams are 1-8 when traveling 2+ time zones in conference play so far this season. Per our good friend Tyler Shoemaker, T-Shoe. East Coast teams in games involving travel from Eastern time to Pacific time and vice versa, 4-6 straight up as underdogs. Now that one doesn't matter as much here. But here's the thing I'm going to do. Congrats to was it Washington who had the big upset win over Michigan.
Yes,
am I remembering that correct? Yeah.
Was that an upset?
Yeah. Now they go to Iowa as a 2.5-point dog. Iowa's a 2.5-point favorite. Given what we know about the Big Ten, Washington traveling all the way to Iowa for an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff against an Iowa team whose offense is no longer meme material. I didn't say it was good. I just said we don't have to meme about it. Like we don't have to do the drive to 35 or whatever it was. Iowa as a 2.5-point favorite. I will take Iowa to get the win over Washington. I don't like picking Iowa, just like I don't like putting real money on Pitt, which I did. But look, I gotta get these non-Big 12 picks. I hit one last week. Finally, it's the reason I had a winning week. So I'm gonna ride with the Hawkeyes. The other team that wears black in the state of Iowa. Rob.
So I'm actually gonna take it's Mississippi and LSU. I'm really excited for this matchup. Like Mississippi's defense has been really good this season, kind of under the radar. Pete Golding, much maligned at Alabama, has done a really good job. They did a good job getting guys out of the portal. Look, the LSU defense is better than they were last season. They're still pretty bad. The offense is good. But so is Old Miss's offense. It is at Baton Rouge, and I think that's kind of leading people, and the South Carolina loss, and in a year where there aren't really great teams, are leading people, I think, a little bit in the wrong direction. And I like Old Miss in this game. I think they're going to be able to move the ball and put up points, and I think that this defense will find a way to get him over the line.
Ole Miss -3. All right, Chase.
Well, Phillip, I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but we haven't made a Big 12 bet of the week yet. We didn't, I know. And something you may not know about the Big 12 bet of the week is that it actually has a grandfather clause. And so because I am a giant troll, week 7 of the 2024 college football season, your Big 12 bet of the week is going to be Oklahoma plus 14.5 at the Texas State Fair. 9 of the last 11 Red River shootout games. I know we're not calling it the shootout anymore, whatever. 9 of the last 11 games have been decided by 8 points or less, one possession. Sooners getting 14.5. Wide variety of discrepancies over the years between Texas and Oklahoma. Doesn't matter. This is a one possession rivalry almost every year. So I think giving Oklahoma 14.5 there makes sense from a market standpoint, because that Johnny Public is going to want to lay the points with Texas, regardless of who's playing quarterback. And I assume it'll be yours this week, but 14.5 to the Sooners in a tight rivalry like this is way too much. So Oklahoma plus the points.
All right. I'm going to throw a little surprise here at you guys. I have, as you know, I put like $20 in at the beginning of the season, and I make like $1.50 bets because it's just for fun. I have $1.35 left in my Bet Saracen, not a sponsor account, that I would like to play and have a little extra playing money for Saturday. So there are 3 games on Thursday, the night this.
Continue.
What?
I think I might be at one of them.
Okay, well, cool. There are 3 games on Thursday. James Madison hosting Coastal Carolina. JMU is a 9.5-point favorite. Louisiana Tech hosting Middle Tennessee. Louisiana Tech is a 4.5-point favorite. And Western Kentucky hosting UTEP. Western Kentucky is a 19.5-point favorite. What should I put my $1.35 on?
Rob, I'm going to let you go first if you have any opinions here.
Ooh.
Or I can vamp for you. It's whatever you want, man. But I got one in the chamber.
You go.
I'm going to tell you confidently over 61.5 JMU Coastal Carolina. I'm so confident I knew what the total was and you didn't say it. That's the confidence level right now.
Let's see what I have. Let's see what Bet Saracen's got for me here. While we wait to see what Rob thinks. I've got the total 60.5.
Ooh.
So, okay. All right. So we got 60.5 in James Madison Coastal. Rob, you got a pick here, or do you agree with Chase?
I agree with Chase. Actually, I like that one because I've got it at 44-26.
Okay.
James Madison game.
God, I would love to win that game by 20. Ooh.
35 cents for the over 60.
I did have a nice rant last week in the non-Big 12 section about how JMU laying 17 on the road against Monroe was idiotic. And then what do you know? They lost outright. So
yeah, Monroe's sneaky good.
I had to spend all Saturday night telling the panicking JMU fans that the sky is not falling. It's fine. They're not that bad.
You know what? UAB's going to look for a new coach. I wonder if they should look at that.
You shut your mouth, Phillip.
I'm sorry. You make the bed. You got to take a nap. That's not the saying.
No one will be sadder if Bob Chesney goes to UAB. Well, first of all, I don't even think that's an upward move, let alone a lateral move.
No, not JMU.
Okay.
Louisiana Monroe. Monroe's head coach was the interim at UAB. They decided not to hire so they could hire Trent Dilfer, and he's doing a great job at Louisiana Monroe because they should.
In the event you were talking about Bob Chesney, what I was going to say was nobody would be sadder than the housewives of Virginia because he is a popular man around these parts. Let me tell you.
Well, now I got to Google Bob Chesney and take a look.
Do it on incognito, man.
You know what is genuinely creepy is anytime you type in a coach into Google, like I think almost always like the second or third option
autofill.
For the autofill is like their wife. You're just like, what is
wives and girlfriends, man? It's a cottage industry in the content space.
all the college football coaches' wives. Like, what in the world? Because I look up college football coaches a lot, and I'm just like, who is doing this?
Okay, so number one under Bob Chesney is Bob Chesney wife. Hold on, let's test this with a few coaches, okay? Shall we? Brett Bielema.
Oh God, Brett Bielema.
Guess what? The first one under Brett Bielema is
wife.
Brett Bielema.
I know it's like
kind of isn't that though? Isn't that Bob Chesney and Brett Bielema? Isn't that kind of the same question but from the opposite end?
Should we do? Hold on. This is probably getting mean. Sam Pittman. Nope. Salary first, then wife.
Yeah, because they're trying to fire Sam Pittman.
That's actually a good test. Is like how you should do that. Like, there's a good one of like how hot someone's seat is like when the like coach's name wife is no longer the first
overtaken
option
by the buyout.
Like coach's name salary, it becomes everyone's like that's when you're truly on the hot seat.
What a great on the fly. Yeah, that's really good.
All right, let's see. Dave Aranda. Let's test this. Dave Aranda. football, salary, defense, record at Baylor, record press conference.
That's
wife.
practically
Yeah,
monk-like.
Yeah,
he's already fired.
oh my God, we did it. We've cracked the code. We don't have to we've got it. Like, we don't have to track airplanes anymore. Like, we know.
All right. I don't think we can. We can't. That's it. That's the show is over. Rob, do me a favor. Where can everybody check out the work you do covering college football, man?
Yeah, you can find everything at sharpcollegefootball.com. And then you can find me at BetaRankFB on the Twitter machine. And then we have a YouTube channel too, Sharp College Football. I've been doing an insane amount of work travel, but I managed to get back and do the Saturday 6 this week because the games were so good.
Rob, seriously, thank you so much for letting us use Beta Rank here on the show. It is going to stay here as part of the show. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome. You are a fantastic guest. Unless you're just never doing this again, this is not the last time that we want to have you on the show.
I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. I as a former Pac-12 guy, I'm now interested and invested in the Big 12, and so I'm definitely following.
You're welcome. Everyone is welcome aboard the Big 12 bandwagon. It's always a good time. Chase, we will drop your MGM bets for this week in the show notes. But plug the show with you and your friends so that everyone knows which pick to actually put money on each week in the NFL.
Yeah, at KState Kiddy on Twitter, and then Square Bets is the podcast where my non-professional friends, I gently guide them in the Circa Millions contest every week to step on it for this week. We threw out Commanders plus 6.5 in a pretty split Ravens Commanders game where I know at least some sharp professional bettors on both sides. So that part's pretty interesting. And I should mention the college picks in the BetMGM column, 63% so far this year. So just smoking the winners out there.
Bravo. All right. Again, Chase, Rob, thank you so much. Y'all enjoy the games this weekend. We will be back on Monday to recap the weekend that was and look ahead to the week that will be. We'll talk to y'all again then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.